Welcome to the Autonomic Homeostasis Activation Podcast. I'm Tom Powles.
And I'm Ruth Lorensson. We'll be unpacking what it looks like to activate your brain to holistically manage stress and trauma to facilitate homeostasis.
Being free to experience wellness in body, mind, and spirit.
Thank you for joining us. Let's get this conversation started. So, Tom.
Yes.
We're here after a long summer and we're excited to do this episode. We're going to be talking about change.
Yes.
And it's good because, I don't know where people are at in terms of, like, for me, I'm willing in fall right now. It's like 90 to 100 degrees in Colorado.
We're looking for change.
So, yeah, absolutely. I went to Sierra Trading Post the other day and bought like full candles to try and like change the season, but it wasn't working. But we are going to talk about change and importantly in the road, like how it fits in this road to wellness, because that is our whole series right now, is the fundamentals of wellness. So we're going to talk about change. So start us off. Why change? Why is change so important in terms of wellness?
Because homeostasis is wellness. That stable, steady state within a range inherently is about change. In other words, there is a stable, steady state, but with homeostasis, there is a range. Our core body temperature isn't 98.6, which isn't actually accurate anymore. That was from the 1800s, and now it's 97 something or other. But my point is that our body temperature varies. It operates within a range. And with homeostasis, one of the changes that had been made to the original definition when Dr. Walter Cannon created the term was he excluded equilibrium. He said equilibrium is very much has a very precise definition with a physiochemical state in a closed system. Human beings are not closed. So their balance, equilibrium isn't the point, not with homeostasis. But it doesn't mean it's markedly out of that range, but it's just a stable, steady state within a range. And there can be dynamic disequilibrium, i.e. change. So homeostasis is life, as Scott Turner put it. And I love that quote because it is. Where there is no life, there is no homeostasis. In other words, when the person is dead, homeostasis isn't a thing. Homeostasis is life, and inherent in the definition of homeostasis, as Walter Cannon described it, is change.
Yeah.
It's just, how is that being managed? How is that being experienced? How is it being restored when the change is so disruptive that homeostasis is compromised? And then the brain itself, we're wired for that to be restored. Pain is a homeostatic emotion, as A.D. Budd Craig put it. Why? Because pain signals the body to restore homeostasis. We have an injury. The brain responds to that injury with healing and restoration, or we interfere. So change is life.
Yeah, and I think I love that because what we're really saying is, like, let's just start by looking at our human bodies, right?
Yeah.
Let's start
our
with
neurobiology.
our neurobiology, and homeostasis, which is life, is really a description of what is how our bodies is navigating to change well, right?
Yes.
In a way that brings us well-being. So, and in our neurobiology, that is temperature ranges and blah, blah, blah. And, all of the little nuanced kind of adaptions it needs to make
Yep.
regarding whether it's 98 degrees on a August Thursday afternoon, or when we get to December when the temperature drops. All of that, our bodies are going to make those adjustments, and that is what homeostasis is.
Yep.
It's navigate. It's a really well it's showing us how to navigate change well, right? Yep. And that, so I love that, because that really I think that gives us a really good picture. But obviously it's not just on neurobiology. It's as human beings, change suddenly is about our mental and emotional and spiritual well-being too. Yes. And so there's going to be changes in all of those spaces.
And change is life.
Yeah.
It's, what do we do with change? How do we sense it? How do we perceive it? How do we respond to change that is either manifesting homeostasis or compromising it?
Mm-hmm. And so, let's start there with the beneficial nature of change, because it is beneficial.
Without change, there's no life.
Yeah, and I've heard people, I might have even said it myself, I don't know, in past years, but people say, I hate change, and we can understand why that is. But let's just start with why change is so beneficial. And we've described it in the human body. Number one, we are not living in a closed system. In a closed system, if we weren't open to any disruptions from the outside, then maybe we could kind of cultivate this kind of super tight balance, and there would be no change and whatever. But that is not real life. It's not real life in our human bodies. It's not real life in our communities. It's not real life in our world. We are open. We are open systems, which means by default there's these constant disruptions. There's this constant opportunities, constant challenges, constant change. And so then the question is really, how do we navigate that well? But the reason why, there's a reason that's there. Like, it's there for, not just for us to kind of go, well, look, we can navigate change. It's it actually, change changes us. Mm-hmm. And that's part of the growth. That's part of the wellness. So without change, like you've just said, it's like you're dead. So
yeah.
So talk more about that, like why, in terms of wellness, like that change within ourselves, it's not just like, what we're not talking about here is wishing that everything would change. We're talking about engaging
or wishing that nothing would.
Yes.
And the phraseology of a dynamic disequilibrium is the nature of homeostasis. It's a dynamic, it's constantly occurring, and it's disequilibrium. Imbalance is inherent in life, and it's constantly being responded to with change to restore normal, stable, steady functioning. So change, and it's the way our neurobiology processes it, is that when we sense or perceive a threat to well-being, then the amygdala is involved. And the amygdala, when we sense or perceive a threat to well-being, sends a message by way of the hypothalamus out of the limbic system, which is the emotional brain, which is why change is so involved in emotion. And if we sense or perceive something as a threat to well-being, which could be change itself, or the absence of change. We can sense the absence of change where we wish there was change.
Yeah.
And we sense the lack of that as a threat.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That should change. That should be different. And we want change. But that's the amygdala, by way of the hypothalamus, sending a message to the sympathetic, flight or fight. And Remember that flight is an effort to avoid the sensed or perceived threat to well-being.
Mm-hmm.
And we experience that avoid as stress and anxiety, and potentially distress and losing it,
Mm-hmm.
anxiety. Then the fight is an effort to manage the sensed or perceived threat to well-being. And we want to manage it. But oftentimes, manage in the sympathetic shows up as depression or anger. I'm managing. I've run into so many situations where even assertiveness has been used to describe what's basically just aggression and anger, but that person's being assertive. No, they're not. They're just angry. And they're saying they're assertive, but no, they're just angry or depressed. And that's that sense of it's not making any difference. I'm trying to manage, but it's not. And that's the amygdala responding to a sensed or perceived threat to well-being. And change can be sensed or perceived as a threat to well-being. Change either where it is happening or change where we wish it would happening. And that's the amygdala. The other dynamic that we can be a part of with our mind is the amygdala sending a message to the parasympathetic. And the parasympathetic is all about homeostasis. Rest, relax, recover, and digest. And the amygdala, the other role, and I've run into so many people that don't even know the amygdala has this other role, but it is as significant and perhaps even more significant in some ways, where the amygdala is about reward and reinforcing pleasurable, positive emotions. And a beneficial anticipation, as I like to term it, and motivation to change, motivation to grow. The amygdala is involved in that as well, when even if there is a sensed or perceived threat to well-being, the motivation is to do something proactively to deal with it. And then the amygdala, by way of the hypothalamus, is sending a message to the parasympathetic. Rest, relax, recover, digest. And we get to choose how we perceive change. Change as threat or change as opportunity.
Yeah, I think that's so helpful, Tom. And, you know, it's just really kind of strong picture language in my mind when you're describing those two. It's like, well, what we know is that change is life, right? We need change. We need to change. We need to grow. That's how life happens, and we want that.
Yes.
But then what happens is we get to this crossroads where we can, how do we perceive change? And then how we perceive change really dictates how we experience it.
Exactly.
So, like, you know, as you're talking about fight and flight, and not just, you know, we can roll that off the tongue, but it's like the fight is the anger, depression. Those are the signs. Or what was the flight one again? The
stress and anxiety.
The stress and anxiety. So think about it. I mean, I think just for a minute, you know, with our listeners, think about situations where, you know, change of job or moving house
or a lack of it.
Yeah, or a lack of it. And are you anxious about that? Because what's happening there is really, if those emotions are strongly at play in a season of overt change, then probably somewhere along the line you're perceiving that change as a threat, and then your amygdala is sending that message to your sympathetic nervous system, which is why you're experiencing change in that way. But the great news is that if we can, right at the beginning of the perception stage, perceive change as good, beneficial, hang on a minute, we know this is good.
Life.
It's not a threat. It's like, it can be challenging, but it's not a threat. There's something beneficial about change. Then it kind of sends it down this completely other route. And when you just described, the rest, recover, relax, digest, parasympathetic, it's like, well, that sounds good.
Nice.
Like, can you imagine,
I can recover.
Yeah.
And this is part of recovering.
And the reason I say that,
change is part of recovering.
Yeah, the reason I say that, because I think, and maybe I'm wrong, I don't know, but I think most people, when they think about people in overt spaces of change, they assume it's going to be anxious and stressful and
oftentimes.
Yeah. And so like no one assumes that it's going to be restful and it's actually going to bring you recovering and, you're going to be able to digest the changes that are happening and
you can relax.
Yeah. Relax in that space.
And then the
knowing it's
digestion
beneficial.
and the processing of food can occur.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
but we can.
We can do that.
And I want to interject this. A simple way that I've found to kind of the tripwire is my experience of this change is that amygdala sympathetic or is it amygdala parasympathetic is with this paradigm. Am I wanting change or am I wanting to change? And wanting change is very much sympathetic. I want change because I'm sensing or perceiving a threat to the current situation, and I want that not the way it's been. I want change. Parasympathetic, rest, relax, recover, digest, in response to change is I want to change. There's all the difference in the world between wanting change and wanting to change.
It's like, I would imagine it's something, one is very abstract, isn't it? It's like, I want someone to fix my world.
Yes.
I want something outside of myself
I want that
to come
not to
in
be
and
happening
magically
anymore, or,
sort itself out.
Or the other person stop doing, or whatever it is.
And it's very kind of, it's almost like hoping for this magical thing to happen to change your life. And the reality is, of course, is when those things happen, they don't change your life because you haven't changed.
Right.
You're not able to even, maybe you would for a season, but long term, those things often don't actually change anything.
Because the external and circumstances just are.
Yeah.
The internal and my own internal environment is wanting to change. And then that is something that can be projected into circumstances and environment. Absolutely.
And I wonder, Tom, do you think, I just want to say here, it's not bad to have that feeling of I want something to change. And I wonder whether it's a sign to us when we get to these points where we're like frustrated or like, I just need something to change, right?
Yes.
I just need an opportunity or something. When that feeling, when that comes upon us, I wonder whether instead of just feeling the frustration of it, seeing it as a sign to go, actually, maybe the route for that desire is for me to embrace changing myself.
Yep. Shift it from sympathetic to parasympathetic.
Yeah. And you can do that. That's the
can.
thing. And then you enter into a season of rest, relax, recover, digest, and you get to change. And then the irony, of course, is that often change happens when you're in those spaces of changing yourself.
Yeah. Life.
Yeah. So I think it's just like,
flourishes.
it's not a condemnation if you're feeling like that,
No,
but
it's
pay
just an
attention.
indication
Don't
of-
keep going down that route. Instead, kind of take charge. Go, okay, hang on a minute. We
Embrace
know
that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's not going to change happening on the outside, happening, in my circumstances, isn't actually going to be the real change. And if you're feeling that sense of frustration, how about
Or fear.
Or fear.
Frustration being the flight or the fight.
The anxiety,
Fear being the flight.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So let's talk a little bit about, you mentioned negative anticipation and beneficial anticipation. And again, they're part of these two experiences.
Oh, very much.
So we've got change. We know we need it. It's life. Our perception of changes can be quite challenging. There's a lot of the times it's easy, very, very easy to see us as a threat. And we have to engage with
and
that.
Completely understandable.
Yes. And we have to really kind of see that happening to kind of make the choice at that point to say, I'm not going to see it as a threat. I'm going to see it as an opportunity. And then you've got the sympathetic and the parasympathetic, which is, depending on the perception, is going to be your experience of that change. One very beneficial, one very detrimental.
Absolutely.
But talk about, you talked about in the parasympathetic, this idea of beneficial anticipation. What is that?
Yeah. We often experience negative anticipation. Something is happening, or we anticipate something happening, and it's not going to be good. Something bad is going to happen.
So that happens a lot with the sympathetic approach to change. It's
that is an indication that it is a sympathetic.
It's all going to go wrong. What is going to happen?
And how often is that actually the case? Rarely.
Yeah.
And how often is it the opposite actually occurred? And, it was actually something beneficial and positive. We are so often wired to the negative anticipation. And the alternative, as I like to characterize it, isn't a positive anticipation. Oh, things are going to come up roses. Well, it's not about positive anticipation as opposed to negative anticipation. It's about a beneficial anticipation. I anticipate in the change, welcome or unwelcome, invited, uninvited, change is life. It happens. And it's the anticipation that can be beneficial. Even if somebody else means it to be detrimental, we can anticipate that this can be beneficial. And that's parasympathetic, because that allows me to rest. Yeah, there's change, but okay. And allows me to relax. I don't have to be wired and tense about this. I can just be in the flow and go, because I anticipate this can be beneficial. And then I can recover and digest. And part of the recovery is when something is in the process of change. In other words, it's alive. Think about that. Something is in the process of change. That's an indication that it's alive. Change isn't a bad thing. Change is an indication that there is life. And this is alive. And that's beneficial. And I'm not talking about, we shared in our pre-conversation about this idea of optimism and pessimism. I'm not talking about that at all. It doesn't have anything to do with optimism or pessimism. The classic example of that is the glass half full or half empty. And my take on that isn't about optimism or pessimism. Is the glass half full or half empty? I'm talking about beneficial anticipation. There's a glass and there's something in it.
Yeah.
Okay. There's a glass and there's something in it. And how is that beneficial? How can that be beneficial?
Mm-hmm.
Because that indicates that with the glass and the something in it, that when that's a person and a situation, there's life.
Mm-hmm.
And how do we support homeostasis and life?
Yeah. I think that's so helpful. And I think it is it's like, what are we spending our energy on looking at, really? And actually, so I'm thinking, it's easier with change that's like obviously good, right? So like,
thank you.
I
Yes.
won the lottery.
Yay.
Great.
Yes.
No one's struggling there. I'm like planning my retirement. I'm going to Hawaii. I'm resting. I'm recovering. I'm relaxing. I'm digesting. But the crux of it comes to when we have change that's usually something that's unexpected, something that actually appears negative. So one example would be possibly you get fired from your job, right? So that is like, oh crap, this is not great. This is not expected. This is a curveball.
Unwanted, even.
Yes. But in those moments, so you could sit there going, oh, the glass is half empty here, but
or broken.
Yeah. But I think to be able to kind of shift ourselves from thinking negatively or positively, or even like, I think we get into trouble because we have very certain ideas about what life should look like, right?
Yes.
And at those points to go, okay, what is this about then? There must be an opportunity in this.
Yep.
To have that perspective.
And it's beneficial.
Which is what you're saying about the glass. It's like, I'm not gonna waste my energy wondering about whether this was so bad or whether this was positive or not. But actually, okay, I didn't expect this, but here's a glass and there's something in it for me. What is that? I'm curious.
That is beneficial.
And, so many of the times and I bring up the job thing because I've had so many friends who have been through these situations. They've lost a job. And at the time, it's always hard. But almost like with every single one of them, that led to something completely better. It often does.
Oh, yeah.
And so that's what change does if we can embrace it. And then, so I guess the question is, how much time are we wasting kind of figuring out whether it's, is the glass half full or half empty or whatever? I think that the invitation is to go, okay, something is changing. It's a glass, something's in it. What is that for me? And I believe it's beneficial. Something's good is going to come out of that.
Yeah.
It sets you on this really great grounded pathway. And I think neurobiology wise, it gets you into that parasympathetic space where, you then get to navigate change in a really healthy homeostatic way. Right?
Yep.
Where there's dynamic disequilibrium. It's not all, bunny rabbits and flowers.
The absence of that is dead.
Yeah.
There's no change.
But what you do know is that you're in a healthy space and there's something beneficial in your future.
I'll give you an example from my own life recently. A great deal of very strenuous exertion in helping my kids move. And my son-in-law and I did that together. And I'm 68. And one of the things that became very apparent is that I'm 68. And that was very challenging. That could either be lamenting I'm 68 and I can't do what I did at 58 or 48 or 38. But the beneficial is that is motivating me to stay and promote life and well-being and work on balance
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
and work on fitness
mm-hmm.
and to be more intentional about that.
Mm-hmm. To make the adjustments.
Absolutely.
That's what you're doing. You're doing homeostasis. It's you're adjusting to the fluctuations that age bring.
Yeah.
And doing it so that you stay in that steady state
Yes.
of wellness and health and well-being.
Now, am I trying to be 58? No, I'm not. That ship sailed, but I can journey on the voyage of sailing in this ship and see where it goes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Beneficial anticipation.
So good. So as we wrap up, let's just a word for people who are pursuing wellness with change. Change is a huge part of wellness, if not all of it, right?
Yep. Because it is life.
Yeah.
And wellness is about homeostasis.
Yeah. And then I guess, what would your advice be from, summarize what we've talked about for someone listening who's like, okay, I'm pursuing well-being, wellness, and on this topic of change, what would be the golden nuggets here for them?
One, don't just embrace change. Embrace change as life and wellness. And then cultivate a beneficial anticipation. And then be assertive, proactive, valuing your relationship with yourself and valuing relationship with others to the same degree, not one more, not one less, but be assertive and proactive about pursuing change itself. Be proactive to pursue change itself because change is life.
Mm.
And just ask a basic question. As you're experiencing change, is the change, and as I am pursuing it, as my choices and decisions are impacting myself and others, is that actually beneficial to myself and others? Or do I just think it's what I want? There are two very different paradigms. There are many people who want change, but it's not beneficial. They just want change, and they force change. But that doesn't mean it's beneficial. In reality, they just think it's good. Pursue beneficial change, where life thrives because of the change, not controlled.
Yeah. That's so good.
Set life free.
So good. Great conversation there, and look forward to the next one. You've been listening to the Autonomic Homeostasis Activation Podcast. Join us next time as we continue in our conversations with Tom.
If you're interested in pursuing your own wellness journey, please check out our website, autonomichealing.org.
You can also reach out to Tom at innerworkings.org.